welcome back to 70s Daydreams. And today we have Leisure by Bruce Petty. This is 76?
Yes.
Yes. And this one there's a lot to chew on. I believe this is another Canadian. Is this a film?
This one I think is Australian, and it is the first Australian one that we did. It's by Film Australia, and it's about 14 minutes long. But it is in two parts, so you'll probably have to watch it in two parts to follow along.
Yeah, the way it's uploaded on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
It might be on like a streaming service, but if you want to just watch it on YouTube, you can just search for it. And I believe this won the Academy Award.
Yes. Yeah, for animated film in 1976.
It's similar to some of the other ones that we've done where they're very sort of like conceptual. There was the one we did about was it fire or electric, where how man discovers fire or something, and then how he uses that to create things in the Industrial Revolution and all of these things.
Yeah, and then it eventually goes into electricity and all of that.
And I feel like we've done a few where it's sort of like these big concept types. And so this one, it's about the difference between work and leisure. Yeah, so it starts off with just like this guy, and he's just like chilling in like blank space. There's no real background or anything, and he's just hanging out and twiddling his thumbs, and there's a lot of narration. So the narrator is basically just like, this is how it used to be. That's almost like the origin story, like before society and everything. And he says how, he wasn't all that bright. So in order to improve his mind, he took up the struggle for existence. And then he starts to challenge himself. And this is how the development of civilization starts. And then since he's doing all this work and doing all these things, he has less time for leisure. But then there's this interplay about how to balance work with leisure.
It's definitely following these through lines that we've had throughout the two seasons of like industry evolution, like progress, like those types of things seem to be a lot in this time period.
There seems to be a lot of critique of it as well. It seems like there's sort of not backhanded, but sort of it talks a lot about how humans get very caught up in work and how they sort of lose themselves. And then it also talks about losing yourself in leisure, which I also have some reservations about. But did you want to approach it from a visual standpoint first, or just like the main themes?
Sure. Let's go for visual. Because mostly what I had to say about this is that it really reminded me of that like Terry Gilliam style, where it's like that blending different types of mediums together. Like there was some photography at the end, and then there's like that line work and stuff.
Yeah, there was these like sequences that were sort of like, I guess, I don't know if they were like passages of time or something, but it would go from the traditional drawn animation to these like cutouts and these collage cutout sequences that was very reminiscent of The Flight by Terry Gilliam, and I'm assuming other Monty Python animations. I really I thought that there was like an owl in it, and it reminded me a little bit of the Tootsie Pop owl. The eyes were sort of like a TV screen, and there were like images flashing over the eyes of the owl.
Yeah, I have to admit that like I don't remember the owl, but I also found it very like visually overwhelming in a way. Like it was like I couldn't focus because there's so many things going on visually at once, and then like the way that the soundtrack was very like overstimulating too. So I wouldn't put it past me to not remember a few things with this one, but
yeah, so like visually it was a lot, and also like with the narration, like the constant narration, that was a lot because they were dropping all these really heavy concepts. So the thing is like the initial, like the main protagonist is just like a pretty simple, not a stick figure, but like a cartoonish looking character, but then it's like all embroidered with all of this other stuff as we go through periods in history. And then, yeah, there's a lot of talk of urbanization as well and how that affects humans' relationship to work and leisure. And then it goes into this sort of like futurist like optimism about like how we can reimagine our cities, and I thought this thing was like kind of all over the
It
place.
really was, yeah.
Yeah.
Visually, audio, like storyline, like, like
Yeah, I mean, I so much was going on. Like you were mentioning the soundtrack. I don't even remember the sound. Like, what was the soundtrack?
it started off kind of like more ominous, I guess, in the beginning, and then it was more like that kind of like melodic, I'm going to tell you a story type of thing, but it kind of went all over the place too with that. I think it started with like a the caveman type character, and then it was kind of like a rhythmic like thumping kind of sound. I have no idea what instrument it was. I was actually going to ask you if you knew, but and then there was like a piano that went through it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good looking piece, but I think for me it was like all of the ideas that the narrator was saying that it was sort of like a philosophical ramble type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think, it had a specific slant or like it was trying to critique something?
Well, one thing that I was considering was, is this some kind of like reaction to the 60s or like to hippie culture? Because there's this whole like leisure and this idea of work and play not being able to like coexist with one another. And it's like saying that people are either all one or they're all the other. And then I noticed that with the animation, there were no women in it until it was like, and then there are two groups of people: the work people, they are the getters, the overcomers, the solvers, and then the leisures, the sitting, the playing, the dreaming. And then it was like all these women on screen, and they were like in these like petticoats and like naked and all this stuff. And I'm just like, in what world do women not work? Like they just their work is not valued, but like they act like they just sit around all day or something, even historically. But I think that also something that I feel about this is it's very like revisionist with the history. Like it's like one of these things that's like very UK England centric view of the world, like where it's just like saying that civilization even is one thing, or that work and play or work and leisure are, one way in the world.
It did seem like a bit Eurocentric, or because like it's sort of had these like broad brush strokes of like, so in the beginning there was nothing, and then like we created all this stuff, and then we all moved to the cities, and it was sort of like painting like, now like there's this middle class and we're all just like living in these urban environments and we're all isolated. And then, I mean, like, I think there's a lot of people who can probably relate to that, but, like not everyone lives in a city, not everyone has, this same relationship to work. And also one thing I took issue with was I don't really see leisure as something. If leisure is something that people do too much of, I haven't seen it. Because, for the past several hundred years, work has been a pretty significant part of our culture, our economic way of life. So I thought that the fact that the narrator was painting it as these like two, like a yin and yang type thing, like on the one hand, like I get it, like yes, it is, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, like it is true. But I mean, I think looking at our society, like we do need more of a balance. But like when they were talking about like all those artists and stuff, I'm pretty sure they like art is work too.
Exactly.
Like I wasn't
Yeah.
sure what they meant by like leisure, as in just like hanging out, like just
Yeah, so
vibing.
much of it,
Yeah.
it was so blurry to me. I was like, well, so a lot of the things that you're saying are work could also be leisure, and the things that you're saying are leisure could also be work. They mentioned sports a lot too. And then like they said, even delineating sports between like amateurs and like the pros. And it very much is work for some people to be, playing sports. It very much is leisure for some people to be playing sports, and maybe those two things overlap a whole lot too.
But yeah, it was just sort of like this false dichotomy of like work and leisure. And like, obviously, I believe we all deserve more leisure and a lot less work. I mean, you look at animals, like they don't do anything most of the
This
day.
is something we talk about quite a
Yeah.
bit. Like,
Yeah, but humans, for whatever reason, we thought it'd be a good idea to, uh, just put ourselves in these really stressful situations for hours on end, all because of progress, in quotes. I don't think there's been a time where like leisure, like too much leisure was the problem. And I don't know if that was like you were saying with the 60s, like, oh yeah, like people were like getting too rowdy and they were hanging out and like partying too much. I'm like, no, I don't really think that was like the problem. But yeah, I mean, there were some like some of these quotes were just like really striking. Like, I think I already mentioned this, but like, in order to improve his mind, he took up struggle for existence. And then another one, to make life more certain, humans took up industry. And then my favorite was, work separate from leisure became pointless, and leisure was desperate to make up for it. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, yes, work is often pointless, but I don't know, like saying like leisure was desperate to make up for it. I don't know if that was like a negative connotation, like saying like, I mean, I do know like there's people who like work a lot and then maybe like their leisure is like drinking a lot or something, or engaging in like self-destructive kind of self-medicating habits. I don't know if that was what it was getting at, but
I
it's
honestly couldn't follow it for most of it. I was like, what point is this making? I'm not really sure. But yeah, I mean, certainly there were a lot of quotes in that sense too. Like the one that I wrote down was, everyone expressing themselves simultaneously was causing tension and blood pressure. So like,
I remember thinking about that one. I was like, I was trying to like that's such a vague thing to say, that like in some ways you could say there's truth in it. But I was like, you use the word express, which is we usually see as a positive thing.
and more of a leisure thing to express yourself than versus like, or a play than a work thing.
Yeah, so like this thing was so interesting because on the one hand, it seemed like it was saying how we need to liberate ourselves from work, and like like the whole thing of that era of like let your hair down, and you are not what you do, and just be yourself and all of that. But then also saying things like that, it seemed a little bit ambiguous to the point of like, well, you need some order. And I don't know if I'm misinterpreting that, but it was just something about the way it was said. It was like saying, yeah, we should all like have more leisure, but also we need some balance. We can't subsidize the state too much. We need, and so I thought that was interesting. But at the same time, anytime I thought it was going too far in that direction, they would say something, and it would sort of pull me back and be like, oh, this is very optimistic, and it almost had like a, I can't think of, I know I don't want to say just futurist, but like there was this like optimism, specifically when they were talking about reimagining cities, and then they had these photographs of cities, and then they would like, it was almost like a box where they would lift the top off of the city, like it cut it in half, and then it showed what was happening behind. So like all sorts of cool leisure activities, and it talked about turning the streets into places for people to play and all of these things. So it had this really kind of forward thinking, almost like urban planning
Yeah.
thing going
Yeah, it did
on.
have that.
I guess this is kind of near, I don't know, like urban renewal. And then I think also, oh, what was it called? I don't know if it's Garden City or there was a specific movement.
Oh, they were talking about like roofs can become gardens and that sort of thing. So is that what you mean?
Yeah, but there was also like a specific like urban planning movement or something. I know that Columbia, Maryland was a part of this, these like planned
Yeah, like
communities.
hyper planned for.
Yeah, so it did have this it felt like it was striving towards something. I don't know, it was a lot and it was curious. It was ambitious. I kind of appreciated how ambitious it was.
It was definitely ambitious, and it won an Oscar for it, so Academy
Yeah.
Award.
Yeah, so that was leisure. Enjoy that at your own leisure. And we will notate this in our ledger.
And
And thanks again.
we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.